Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of trans rights, or in broader terms, LGBTQ plus rights, and its relationship with, or purported relationship with, democracy. Now, the general argument from the activists that are all globalist funded and NGO supported and that sort of thing is that democracy cannot exist. Indeed, the essence of democracy is that trans rights or the rights of any allegedly marginalized group, that trans rights must be fully enshrined in law and in everything else. And if it isn't, then democracy cannot exist. So democracy can only exist if the most oppressed and marginalized group in society has equal rights with everyone else. From an activist point of view, this is has equal rights with everyone else, and only then can democracy exist. So democracy is therefore under assault from these so-called marginalized groups. Again, all funded and organized and scripted and set up by the globalists. So democracy cannot exist until these people have these rights. Now, it's a never-ending treadmill, because the rights don't have to be stated that this is what we want and then we're done. Every day, new demands and very shrill demands for additional rights, further rights, expanded rights come up from a marginalized group. And every day there's a new marginalized group that's been invented, and then they have their rights or demands for rights, and their now, where the rights things comes in, I don't know. Trans rights are human rights. Until trans people are equal to everyone else, we have no democracy. Democracy is equality for trans people. And this equating of democracy with rights for, and just vague, open-ended rights for any oppressed group who can claim, various levels of oppression and so on. Did you know that trans people are murdered by police every day by the million, the gazillion, the trillion? And evil white fascists are killing us everywhere, killing us. Trans people are oppressed. And it's very dramatic prose that's being used. And none of the interviews I've seen have really pushed back or asked any questions. Well, you say that trans people are, 400% more likely to be murdered but well, what evidence do you have for this? Maybe it's true, but let's go through the evidence. And certainly the evidence that I've been able to find is that trans people are disproportionately employed as prostitutes, or sex workers, I think it's now called. And they're also heavily involved with drug dealing, things like that. And so they end up getting into difficult situations in drug, prostitution-related issues, where they are, in a mutual violence situation where they're killed by, other drug dealers or whatever. But they live a very, very dangerous life, and their rate of assault and death is really no higher than anyone who's employed in those fields. So the idea that it's uniquely a trans issue, of course, is nonsense. But again, the pushback is almost zero. The wider mainstream media are globalist controlled, as the whole dialogue in the trans rights issue is also globalist controlled, sort of go along with it. So this equating of minority rights with democracy. Democracy cannot exist until the most oppressed person on the planet has equal rights with everyone else. And then equal rights becomes equal outcomes with everyone else. Therefore, democracy does not exist. Therefore, democracy is illegitimate. Anything is therefore then better than democracy, and so on. So you can see how it's a very useful device for undermining democracy, which, by the way, is pretty much out of the communist agitating playbook from the the Soviet Cold War era. This is sort of the logic that they step people through. So they would go to the poorest, most illiterate black person and say, hey, Do you know why you're poor? Well, it's because I never went to school and I can't read or write. No. It's got nothing to do with that. It's because I'm lazy. I don't get out of bed until 11 o'clock in the morning. No, nothing to do with that. It's because you're oppressed by those damn fucking fascist capitalist Nazis. That's why. That's why you're poor. None of the other stuff. It's that. That only is causing you to. But if you had a fairer society, a communist society where all outcomes were equal, then you would have your rights, and then everything would be fine. And that's, of course, a very seductive message to give to people at the very bottom of and the least able and least capable. That, well, you can have an equal outcome with everyone else, even the smartest, hardest working, brightest guy. You can have an equal outcome with him if we have this different system of government and social organisation. Now, given there are far more people who have less than the much fewer number of people who have more, then this is generally an acceptable message, or not so much necessarily acceptable, but one that has its obvious attractions. So, if you're a very confused, transgender person who's living on the edge minute by minute every day, then and someone says, "Hey, we can get you equal outcomes with everyone else, and you'll never have to worry again. You'll never have to worry about food, shelter, this and that." Oh, hey, I want a system like that. Well, if you don't have a system like that, it means we don't have democracy. That's what it means. So really, the idea that democracy has been equated, democracy means capitalism and means oppression. So we have to change that. And just to prove that democracy means oppression, trans people want to be trans children, people under the age, people at 12, 13 years old want to have gender reassignment surgery, and they want to do it on the public purse. The taxpayer has to pay for it, and that is a right. And they have a right to do it at 12 years old. They have a right that the taxpayer must pay for it. Those are rights. We have a right, a damn fucking right. And if we don't have those rights, we are denied them, or they are limited or restrained in any way, then we don't have rights. If we don't have rights, we don't have democracy. And if we don't have democracy, then the whole edifice is illegitimate and must come down and must be replaced by something else. So you can see it's a real backdoor assault on democracy. Now, democracy to some people is that the citizens have a right to vote to select their government, who will govern them, who will make the laws, who will make the decisions. And that government is accountable to the people who vote for them. Party machine politics has changed that to a large extent. But that was the original idea of say in modern democratic structure, whether it be the United States following the Declaration of Independence or subsequent to the War of Independence, or the British development of modern democracy. The idea was that you would pick somebody from your local area to represent you in the federal parliament. So everybody would know that person, or most people would know that person. They lived in the area since birth. They represented the people, and they represented the area, and they represented the nation, and so on. Now that's been changed by big party machine politics, where the party machine allocates, who sits for what area and what electorate, and big money donations, things like that, have perverse effects on that. But the idea of the representative democracy is something we have strayed from. Again, big party machine politics. Those big party machines, the big political apparatus, the DNC, the RNC, whatever the case may be, Labor Party, Conservative Party, and so on. Those are now fully controlled by the globalists. So they get to really dictate who sits for what, what electoral districts, who gets promoted to ministries, who gets a job in the cabinet, who becomes the prime minister. I mean, look at Britain. The globalists have just installed their own candidate as prime minister of the United Kingdom without even a fucking vote. And if you want to have a look at how democracy is being undermined, there's your example. And I think too, democracy from the globalist perspective, the election of Donald Trump, the election of the Brexit election, and so on. This has proved to the globalists that having complete control of the media and so on, that's just not enough. That's not enough. They have to control more than that if they're going to get the outcomes that they want and require. Now, that quite happy democracy stays as a name only and an illusion. They're more than happy to do that, but they have to have a much tighter control of the entire process, whether it's the candidates or voting eligibility, vote counting. It doesn't matter, but they need tighter control so that the outcome they want can be delivered. Media control is not enough. The people don't want the globalist project. They won't vote for it if they're given the chance. So the globalists have to do things like shut down all alternative voices, make sure there's no other message other than the globalist narrative, and just to make sure that just in case that doesn't work, then they need to go inside the very epicenter of the democratic process and make sure that's suitably controlled as well. But making the democratic process appear illegitimate is interesting. Now, I was talking to some people we know, and they've got a daughter. I think she's 20 or 20. She's at college doing some bullshit sociology course. They're quite well to do. They've got a very spacious house. They bought her a nice car to go. They give her a very generous allowance so she can go night clubbing and buy all designer clothes. I mean, she's not shopping at Walmart or anything. So she's always well dressed, or designer level clothes. I'm not sure about the well dressed bit. I mean, she does the pink hair and the purple hair and all that stuff. But she was there when we were talking about something. There'd been a trans rights protest in the town. Again, very choreographed, clearly organised, globalist funded and organised. But I mentioned, or we were talking about, and I said in passing, I don't know how these trans rights activists equate getting free, taxpayer funded gender reassignment surgery for minors. That happens to be that is a direct equation with democracy. That if they don't get it, there's no democracy. And the young girl jumped straight away. It was almost like an electric shock had been put through. Jumped. Well, that's right. Democracy can't exist. If unless trans people can get taxpayer funded reassignment surgery, there's no democracy. And she didn't even sort of think about it. It was just a reflex action. Now, I don't know how that brainwashing can be so successful. It's beyond me how somebody from a privileged situation like her, who's never had to worry about where the next dollar's coming from, how is she able to how has she been so successfully brainwashed? It seems almost beyond me, but it is. Now, she's not that bright. She's no genius. She's never had to struggle or anything. But you'd think, given again her privileged circumstances, her parents were certainly not screaming lefties or anything like that. You think that she would have at least be able to see both sides of the question. But she was adamant 100%. That's it. Unless trans people get free taxpayer-funded surgery and at 12 years old, if that doesn't happen, we have no democracy. And you go, what? So this is very much a way democracy can be undermined and attacked, indirectly and obliquely. But by equating democracy with these sorts of things, saying, well, democracy doesn't deliver free, taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgery to 12-year-olds. So we therefore don't have democracy. So anything else is therefore better. And only when transgender 12-year-olds get free taxpayer, only then will we have democracy. And that equation seems incredible or fantastic. You look at it and go, how could anyone see that? See the world that way? But they have been, and they've been many of them have been successfully brainwashed to see it like that. Therefore, they are not supporters of democracy. Democracy is illegitimate because it doesn't deliver free gender reassignment surgery to trans 12-year-olds or alleged trans 12-year-olds. That's incredible. But it means that now armies of children that believe that democracy is anyone who says that transgender people should not get taxpayer-funded 12-year-olds, should not get taxpayer-funded gender reassignment surgery is a Nazi. They don't even deserve to live or exist. They're that evil. They are that evil. No one is more evil than that. Did you know transgender people are dying, and those Nazis are, and they seem to have taken on this thing. I mean, how could anyone absorb that? I don't imagine myself believing any of this nonsense. Even as a school kid, I had this point where I'd always go and find the book that argued the counterpoint. And to me, that was just how you found, the sensible middle ground. But that seems to be, I've mentioned that to a few younger, senior high school kids, college kids, that sort of thing. And they look at me like I'm fucking insane or something. But why would you want to find the middle ground? Why not feel the rage coursing through you? And fuck. So this is how another way that they're using to assault democracy and render it as illegitimate in the eyes of many. And as far as I can tell, they're succeeding. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.